You are sitting on a gold mine. Right now, at this very second, there is a substance moving through your body that is more valuable than any currency on earth. It is not adrenaline. It is not dopamine. It is a secretion so powerful, so transformative, that ancient civilizations built entire religions just to hide its formula in plain sight. They told you Christ was a man who lived 2,000 years ago. They told you salvation comes from looking up at the sky, waiting for a savior to descend from the clouds. But they lied to you. The word Christ does not mean a person. In the original Greek, Christos means anointed. It means oil. The Anointed One is not a figure in history books. It is a biological fluid manufactured inside your own skull. Specifically, in a thin layer of gray matter known to anatomists as the Claustrum. This is the secret of the ages. The Bible, the Vedic texts, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, they are not books of mythology. They are physiology manuals. They are coded maps of the human nervous system. And the story of Jesus, the story of his descent, his life of 33 years, and his crucifixion. It is the story of this oil descending down your 33 vertebrae, and its resurrection back up into the brain to ignite the pineal gland. But here is the terrifying part. Here is why you feel stuck, tired, and spiritually disconnected. The modern world is engineered to destroy this oil before it can ever rise. Look at your life, the fluoride in your water, the processed sugar in your food, the blue light from the screen you are staring at right now, the constant state of fear and lust promoted by the media. None of this is accidental. It is a systematic suppression of your biological potential. It is designed to keep the oil at the base of your spine, to keep you trapped in your lower nature, to keep you asleep. They know that if this oil rises, if it crosses the vagus nerve and returns to the brain, you do not just feel good. You change. Your DNA activates. You unlock a state of consciousness that makes you uncontrollable by any external system. They call it enlightenment. Science calls it gamma wave oscillation. Most people will live and die without ever knowing this fluid exists. They will waste it, month after month, mistakenly thinking it is just biological waste. But not you. Not anymore. In the next 45 minutes, we are going to break the seal. We are going to ignore the New Age fluff and look strictly at the anatomy. I will show you the chemistry of God. I will show you the physical location of the land of milk and honey inside your brain. And most importantly, I will give you the protocol, the exact timing and method to save this seed, raise the oil, and reclaim the power they tried to breed out of you. This is biological alchemy, and your transformation begins now. Have you ever wondered why the word secret is phonetically identical to the word secretion? This is not a coincidence of language. It is a breadcrumb left by the masters of the past. The secret is the secretion. For 2,000 years, the institutions of power have externalized the divine. They built massive stone cathedrals and told you God lives there. They wrote books about a holy land in the Middle East and told you salvation happened there. But if you look at the ancient texts with the eyes of a biologist, the map changes entirely. The Holy Land is not a geography. It is the human body. Let us look at the evidence. It is undeniable once you see it. The Bible speaks of a land flowing with milk and honey. Religious scholars have spent centuries looking for this terrain on a map. They dug up the deserts of Israel and Egypt, but they were looking in the wrong place. In biochemistry, The land of milk and honey exists between your ears. It describes the two primary glands that govern your endocrine system, the pineal gland and the pituitary gland. The pineal gland is the male aspect. It connects to the solar energy. It produces a golden fluid. This is the honey. The pituitary gland is the female aspect. It connects to lunar energy. It produces a white, milky fluid. This is the milk. But let's go deeper into the chemistry. Because this is not just about fluids, it is about mineral salts. You are not just a biological entity. You are a solar entity. Your body is a microcosmic reflection of the macrocosm. This is why the 12 signs of the zodiac correspond exactly to the 12 systems of the human body. Aries rules the head. Taurus rules the throat. Gemini, the arms and lungs. Cancer, the chest. Leo, the heart. All the way down to Pisces, the feet. Medical astrology is the grandfather of modern pharmacology. Every month, the moon stays in a specific sign for 2.5 days. As the moon transits through the sky, it affects the saline levels in your blood. Science tells us that the human body requires 12 essential inorganic mineral salts to build and repair cells. These are called the 12 tissue salts, or cell salts. Calcium fluoride, iron phosphate, potassium chloride, and so on. When you were born, the sun was in a specific zodiac sign. This is your keynote. This sign determines the structural weakness of your body. If you are an Aries, you tend to be deficient in potassium phosphate. If you are a Libra, you lack sodium phosphate. Why does this matter for the Christos oil? Because the oil is the sum total of all 12 salts. It is the perfect chemical compound. Every month, when the moon enters your sign, your body attempts to reconstruct this perfect bridge. It tries to gather all 12 mineral salts to manufacture the seed. But most of us are deficient. Our soil is depleted. Our food is empty. We are lacking the building blocks. So when the moon triggers the production of the oil, the body looks for the materials and finds nothing. The construction fails. The seed is born weak, incomplete. It cannot hold the charge. This is why diet is not just about losing weight. It is about alchemy. You must supply the body with the specific mineral salt that corresponds to the moon's position. If the moon is in Capricorn, eat foods rich in calcium phosphate, kale, spinach, figs. If the moon is in Leo, you need magnesium phosphate, blueberries, almonds. By aligning your mineral intake with the star cycles, you give your body the raw bricks it needs to build the temple. You stop the degeneration and start regeneration. You literally become a salt of the earth. Without these salts, the oil is just water. With them, it becomes a conductor. When these two glands are synchronized, when the milk and honey mix, they flow down the brainstem. And what is the brainstem known as in ancient writings? It is the River Jordan. The fluid travels down the River Jordan, which is your spinal cord. And this brings us to the number 33. You see the number 33 everywhere in mysticism. Jesus was crucified at age 33. King David ruled for 33 years. In Freemasonry, the highest order is the 33rd degree. Why? Why is this number so important that secret societies put it on their emblems? Because the human vertebral column is composed of 33 vertebrae. The story of the life of Jesus is not just a historical account. It is a description of the journey of the sacred oil. The oil descends from the brain, travels down the 33 vertebrae, and creates a seed at the base of the spine. This area, the solar plexus, is what the ancients called Bethlehem. In Hebrew, Bethlehem literally means house of bread. This is where the seed, the bread of life, is born within you. Do you see the pattern? The church took anatomy and turned it into history. They took a physiological process that happens inside you every single month and turned it into a one-time event that happened to a man thousands of years ago. Why would they do this? Because if you believe God is outside of you, you need a middleman. You need a priest. You need a church. You need to pay tithes and ask for forgiveness. You become a slave to an external system. But if you understand that the Temple of Solomon is actually the temple of the soul of man, which is your skull, and if you understand that the Holy of Holies is the central chamber of your brain, where the thalamus sits, then you realize you do not need the church. You are the church. The architects of modern society know this. This is why the medical establishment ignores the soul. This is why they call 97% of your DNA junk DNA. They do not want you to know how the machine works, because if you knew how to operate the machine, you would no longer be a worker bee in their hive. You would be the queen. But simply knowing the map is not enough. You must understand the mechanism. You must understand how this oil descends, how it is destroyed by your daily habits, and most importantly, how to force it back up. The descent of the oil is a biological process that mimics the seasons. And right now, inside your body, winter is coming. Let us go deeper into the descent. Let us pause and look at a story you have heard since childhood. The story of Santa Claus. You think it is a fairy tale for children? No. It is one of the most profound anatomical descriptions ever written. Think about the phonetics. Santa, Claus, Saint, Claustrum. The claustrum, as we discussed, is the thin layer in the brain that secretes the oil. Where is the claustrum located? In the North Pole of the body, the head. And who lives at the North Pole? Santa Claus. Santa works all year to produce gifts. These gifts are the sacred secretion. And when does he deliver these gifts? At the end of the year, when the sun moves from Sagittarius to Capricorn. This is the winter solstice. And how does Santa enter the house? He comes down the chimney. Look at the human spine. It is a hollow tube composed of vertebrae leading from the roof, the brain, down to the hearth, the sacrum. The spine is the chimney. And what waits at the bottom of the chimney? The fire, the hearth. The sacrum bone is connected to the fire of the Kundalini energy at the base of the spine. But here is the detail that proves this is not a coincidence. Santa rides a sleigh pulled by reindeer. Why reindeer? Why not horses? Because reindeer are animals that are known for their ability to fly? No. Because of the anatomy of the brain. In the center of your brain, surrounding the thalamus and the pineal gland, there is a structure called the arbor vitae. In Latin, this means tree of life. But if you look at a cross-section of the human midbrain, the shape of the arbor vitae looks exactly, and I mean exactly, like the branching antlers of a reindeer. The ancients were not writing about a man in a red suit. They were drawing diagrams of your brain. They were telling you that the gift of God originates in the North Pole, the cerebrum, travels down the chimney, the spinal cord. And if you have been good, preserved the oil, the gift is delivered. If you have been naughty, wasted the oil, you get coal, carbon, ash, the burnt residue of a wasted life force. This is the code. They hid the truth in fairy tales so that even if the books were burned, the knowledge would survive in the stories we tell our children. Let us descend into the microscopic world of your own biology. To understand how to become a god, you must first understand the machinery of the mortal. It begins in the center of the brain, within the claustrum. The claustrum is a thin, irregular sheet of gray matter, hidden deep within the cerebral cortex. In the study of astrotheology, this is the Santa Claus of the body. Just as Santa Claus brings gifts down the chimney, the claustrum produces the most precious gift of all, a sacred oil, and sends it down the chimney of your spinal cord. This secretion is unique. As it is produced, it differentiates. Part of it goes to the pineal gland, and part of it goes to the pituitary gland. The fluid from the pineal is electric. It is yellow. It carries a positive charge. This is the honey. The fluid from the pituitary is magnetic. It is white. It carries a negative charge. This is the milk. Every month, when the moon enters the zodiac sign that you were born in, your sun sign, a chemical wedding takes place. The positive and negative fluids merge in the brain. They create a psychophysical germ, a seed. This seed is living energy. It enters the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in the body, which connects the brain to every major organ. This nerve is the tree of life in the Garden of Eden. The oil travels down this tree, branching out to the lungs and the stomach, until it finally reaches its destination at the base of the spine. The sacrum. The word sacrum comes from the Latin word sacre, meaning sacred. This is the holy tomb. This is where the seed is buried. In the Bible, this is described as Jesus going down into Egypt. Egypt, anatomically, represents the lower regions of the body, the flesh, the physical desires. And here is where the tragedy of modern human existence occurs. This seed enters the solar plexus, also known as the manger. It stays there for 2.5 days. During these 2.5 days, the moon is in your sun sign. This is your personal monthly cycle. During this window, the seed is incredibly fragile. It is waiting to be germinated. It is waiting to be raised back up. But for 99% of the population, the seed never rises. It is destroyed. How is it destroyed? It is destroyed by acid. The chemistry of the sacred secretion is alkaline, but the modern lifestyle is acidic. When you eat processed meat, sugar, and alcohol, your blood pH drops. When you stress over money or relationships, your body floods with cortisol, which is acidic. But the greatest destroyer of the seed is sexual waste. The ancients knew that this fluid is the raw material of life. If you expend it in a moment of lust, if you waste the life force solely for sensation, the oil is ejected from the body. The seed is lost. The internal pressure required to raise the oil back up the spine is released. This is the meaning of the biblical phrase, eating of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It is the decision to use your life force for lower sensation rather than higher regeneration. When the oil is destroyed by acid or depletion, it cannot rise. It stays in the lower chakras. It becomes trapped in the cycle of survival, reproduction, and death. You remain immortal. You remain asleep. But if you can preserve this seed for those 2.5 days, if you can keep your body alkaline, if you can conserve your sexual energy and retain the fluid, Then a miracle of chemistry begins to happen. The seed begins to vibrate. The heat in the solar plexus rises. The oil, now fermented and matured, begins to defy gravity. It starts its journey back up the ladder. This is the beginning of the ascent. This is the biological alchemy that turns lead into gold. And now, we reach the resurrection, the ascension. If you have preserved the seed, if you have lived cleanly and disciplined the body, the oil begins to rise. It defies gravity. It travels back up the spinal cord, passing the 33 vertebrae, moving from the lower hell of the gut to the higher heaven of the brain. The journey of the oil back up the spine is not a smooth ride. It must pass through the 7 seals. Religion calls them chakras. The Book of Revelation calls them the 7 churches of Asia, but anatomy calls them the endocrine glands. This is the war mentioned in the ancient texts. As the oil rises, it must conquer the frequency of each gland. First, it must pass the gonads, the root, the instinct of survival and procreation. If you are trapped in lust, the heat here evaporates the oil. It dies on the first step. Second, the adrenals, the gut, the instinct of power and control. If you are addicted to stress, to adrenaline, to conflict, the oil is consumed by the acid of cortisol. Third, the pancreas, the solar plexus, the seat of emotion. Fourth, the thymus, the heart. This is the great filter. The oil cannot rise past the diaphragm if your blood is thick with hate, resentment, or unforgiveness. The chemistry of hate creates a blockage in the thymus gland. It literally hardens the heart. The oil hits this ceiling and falls back down. This is why every master said, "Love is the key." It wasn't poetry. It was a technical requirement for the fluid to pass the thymus. Fifth, the thyroid, the throat, the power of the word. Sixth, the pituitary. And seventh, the pineal. When the oil successfully navigates these 7 stations, it gathers the essence of each gland. It collects the hormones, the chemical messengers. By the time it reaches the brain, it is no longer just the simple secretion that left the claustrum a month ago. It has been enriched. It has been tested. It has transmuted the lead of the lower body into the gold of the higher mind. It is now ready to enter the bridal chamber of the 3rd ventricle. But before it can enter the skull, it must face the final trial. It must face the crucifixion. We have been taught to fear the cross, to see it as an instrument of torture and death. But in biological alchemy, the cross is the gateway to power. At the top of your spinal cord, at the base of the skull, lies the medulla oblongata. Here, the pneumogastric nerves, the vagus nerves, physically cross each other. They form a literal X shape, a cross. When the sacred oil rises to this point, it crosses us as this nerve center. This is the crucifixion. It is not the death of the man, it is the death of the lower nature. It is the transmutation of the substance. As the oil crosses this threshold, its vibration increases 1,000 times. It is refined. It is purified. It is no longer just a biological fluid. It has become a superconductor of high-frequency energy. The oil then enters the fluid-filled space in the center of the brain known as the 3rd ventricle. In ancient anatomy, this space was called the Cave of Brahma. In the Bible, it is the tomb where Jesus lay for 3 days. The oil remains in this hollow space, dormant, building pressure, building charge. And then, the miracle happens. The electrical charge of the oil becomes so great that it strikes the pineal gland. The pineal gland sits directly behind the third ventricle. It is filled with tiny calcite crystals, microcrystals that have piezoelectric properties. This means that when they are squeezed or pressurized, they release light. When the supercharged oil hits the pineal gland, these crystals vibrate. They expand. The stone is rolled away from the tomb, and suddenly, the brain is flooded with light. This is not a metaphor. This is literal bioluminescence. The pineal gland secretes a powerful metabolite of melatonin. Modern science calls it dimethyltryptamine, or DMT. The spirit molecule. When this chemical floods your cortex, the veil of the material world is torn in two. You are no longer looking through the two eyes of the physical body, which only see the three-dimensional world. You are looking through the single eye. Jesus said, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." He was describing the activation of the pineal gland. In this moment, the dormant brain cells wake up. The millions of neurons that science tells you are useless suddenly fire. You experience a level of consciousness that transcends time and space. You remember who you are. You remember that you are not a body with a soul, but a soul operating a sophisticated biological suit. This is the kingdom of heaven. It is not a place you go to when you die. It is a frequency you tune into when you are truly alive. This is the biological purpose of your existence: to raise the oil, to light the lamp, to become the Christos. But knowing this is one thing, doing it is another. How do we actually achieve this in a toxic modern world? How do we navigate the calendar and the diet to ensure the oil rises? We will cover the practical protocol in the final chapter. So how do you reclaim your birthright? How do you stop wasting the oil and start generating the light? You do not need a priest. You do not need a guru. You simply need a calendar and discipline. Here is the protocol. First, you must understand the timing. The production of the seed is not random. It happens once a month, specifically when the moon enters your sun sign. If you were born a Scorpio, your body produces the oil when the moon is in Scorpio. You need to track this. Mark these 2.5 days on your calendar. This is your personal Holy Week. During this window, your body is a laboratory. You must treat it with extreme care. Second, you must control the chemistry. Remember, the enemy of the oil is acid. Most modern food is highly acidic. Meat, sugar, alcohol, coffee, fried foods. These things lower your pH and destroy the seed before it can even begin to rise. For these specific days, switch to an alkaline diet. Eat raw vegetables, drink lemon water, fast if you can. You are preparing the body to host a high-frequency charge. You cannot conduct high-voltage electricity through a dirty wire. Third, and most importantly, you must operate the pump. The cerebrospinal fluid does not move by itself. It needs a mechanism. In a dormant body, the fluid stagnates. To raise the oil, you must physically push it up the spine. This is the secret purpose of ancient breathwork. When you breathe rhythmically and deeply, you move the sacrum bone at the base of your spine and the sphenoid bone in your skull. These two bones act as a mechanical pump. Deep, rhythmic breathing creates a pressure wave. It literally squeezes the fluid up the spinal column, fighting gravity, pushing it towards the brain. So during your moon cycle, sit, breathe, visualize the energy rising. Do not let the energy escape through lower impulses. Retain it, preserve it, push it up. It sounds simple, but in a world designed to keep you distracted, fed on poison, and constantly drained of sexual energy, this is the hardest thing you will ever do. They wanted you to look for miracles outside, so you would never find the miracle within. They wanted you to think the Bible was a history book, so you wouldn't read it as an instruction manual. But now you know. The kingdom of heaven is strictly within you, physically, chemically, biologically. The question isn't whether the story is true. The question is, are you brave enough to test it on your own body? You have the map. You have the key. The rest is up to you. Welcome to the resistance.